Hello and welcome to the Newsroom with Sana. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at some very important developments, with the first in the aftermath of what has happened over the weekend. The Doha talks are very substantial to peace in the region and, of course, to Pakistan and Afghanistan. And Pakistan has extended its support and appreciation for Qatar and Turkey for mediating these talks. The final agreement remains to be seen on the 25th of October in Istanbul, but there have been small details that are left, but the general ways of moving forward have already been chalked out, with both the countries ensuring that they will protect each other's sanctity and that the Afghan Taliban regime will not allow terrorists to use their soil against any other territory, including Pakistan. Much remains to be seen in terms of whether or not this will be chalking out a practical and implementable way forward, and what really needs to be addressed as part of the key challenges surrounding this commitment, and what sort of issues will both the countries need to look at to ensure that there is peace in the region. Our next story is going to be taking a look at what is happening in Gaza after the very important brokered peace deal by the US. It seems that there have been a number of violations, about 80 recorded violations from Israel, and so the fragility of this peace deal is being much talked about, and there are concerns with regards to how exactly will there be peace ensured for the people of Gaza and what are the plans ahead. The second phase seems to be on the horizon, with top US officials also going ahead in Israel and having discussions forward, and the US president calling on Hamas to disarm and saying that that will be something done by the US if it fails to do so. What exactly is required to ensure that this ceasefire and peace deal holds, and whether or not Israel will be able to be influenced by the United States and other partners remains to be seen. And lastly, we're going to be taking a look at what is happening in France, and it seems that adding to the woes of the French government is a Hollywood-style heist that has occurred in the very iconic museum, the Louvre, which is very integral in holding the crown jewels of the royals in France. And it seems that in just about 4 minutes, 4 people were able to go ahead and take about 8 items, dropping the 9th on their way out. So we're going to be taking a look at how exactly did that happen and what happens next. These are going to be our top stories of the hour in the newsroom today. Firstly, what we're going to be talking about is what is happening between Pakistan and Afghanistan. The ceasefire is very important to peace in the region, and Pakistan and Afghanistan have shared historic ties over a large number of years. Pakistan has also hosted Afghan refugees for decades, and so it is not that Pakistan is speaking up just for its own rights, but also for the people of Afghanistan, and is only asking of the Afghan Taliban regime to ensure that their territory is not used against any other, and this reassurance is the right of any sovereign country. And it is also something of concern in terms of the statements that we have been seeing coming over from the defense minister of the Afghan Taliban regime, claiming the Duran line to be hypothetical and having claims of borders all the way over to Attab, which go against the history, of course, in the region, particularly when we don't see any claims being made to Delhi or any other Indian state that was also ruled by Afghan invaders in the past. And so it is integral to understand what is at stake here. Pakistan is asking for peace in the region and is not relying on any baseless concerns of historic ideas, and is not disrespecting the borders that exist as they do today. What it needs is the assurance and the protection from the Afghan Taliban regime that their soil will not be used against any other territory, and it is important to underline that that is essential not just for Pakistan but Afghanistan as well. For this, we have been joined in the newsroom today by Major General Retired Inam Haque, and we'll be talking more about this with him. Thank you very much, General Sab, for joining us and being a part of today's show. I would like your take on, when we take a look at the current circumstances and the history that existed between Pakistan and Afghanistan. The Doha talks at the moment are very important, and we welcome what has been agreed upon in a positive note. Much remains to be seen as to how exactly this will be implemented, and we'll be seeing more of that on the 25th of this month. But in terms of our relationship with Afghanistan and the assurance that we need, do you think that this ceasefire, this agreement, and this commitment and assurance coming in from the Afghan Taliban regime will hold this time around? And it is a problem that the Afghan Taliban regime needs to understand is as much theirs as it is ours.
Yeah, thank you, Sana. Thank you for your program. I think it's the first time I'm with you in this program.
Welcome to the show, sir.
My short answer is yes. There are all the more chances that this agreement this time around will hold. And my reasons for that is that there is a tacit agreement by the Afghan side of their support to the TTP. So far, they were in denial. Today, I read a tweet by Sohail Shaheen, who was part of the negotiating team in Doha. And there is a very significant word in that tweet. He said that Pakistan has agreed that Pakistan would not support anti-Emirate groups anywhere. That means not, our support to Northern Alliance and other groups who are actually the nemesis with the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, the IEA.
Hmm.
And he also said that Afghanistan has committed not to be the Mlathar of forces which are inimical to Pakistan. Now, Mlathar is basically the guy who is an accomplice in crime. Now, that is a very, very significant admission on part of the Afghanistan, and I read too much into this line. So, for the first time, there is an agreement or an admission on the IEA that yes, TTP is a problem, and TTP is as much their problem as it is our problem, and something has to be done about it. Number one. Number two, Pakistan has got very punishing leverages vis-a-vis Afghanistan, and Afghanistan knows it. Number three, Pakistan's military capability is beyond doubt. Dominant Pakistan's military capability is very potent, and Pakistan's military capability can reach every nook and cranny of Afghanistan at the time and at the target of our own choosing. And they have seen a small demonstration of this when we attacked Kabul and Kandahar. And number four, as a result of the animosity or the hostility between the two countries for the last week or so, the major sufferers are the Afghan general public. So there is a realization of these 4 points inside Afghanistan, inside the emirate, which is already under pressure for a lot of other issues like human rights, gender apartheid, and all sorts of things, women education and all that. So my reckoning is that yes, this time around the peace agreement will hold. In the past, a lot of people say that in the past the agreements didn't hold. In the past, the agreements didn't hold. Agreements which were between among Afghan groups, even the agreement which signed in Makkah, they wouldn't hold. But this is an agreement with Pakistan for the first time, and Pakistan is a very, very dominant and important party to the conflict. And I personally think that this agreement would hold, and it should hold because in our neighborhood you don't want to see trouble. The Afghan humanity is under a lot of pressure and they are uprooted. You have a sort of a soft corner for the general public also, uh, who have been migrants in their own land, internally displaced person for a host of reasons. So there is a sympathy, human sympathy for these people also. If you look at the 7 transit points between the two countries and numerous other points, they're chock-a-block because of the lack of the trade between the two countries. The things have perished, and the traders are selling their ware at a half prices. So all those things are accumulatively pointing towards the situation that this time the agreement would hold, and it should hold. We should live like good neighbors. And my own take, Sana, is that beyond the TTP, if you take out the irritant of TTP, there is nothing between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and we can be ideal neighbors in the constants of the bilateral relationship, the geography, the culture, the religion, and everything is positive. There are only variables, three, four minor variables, which are creating a problem, and those variables are actually topped by TTP, Duran Line, and one refugees. If we are able to resolve the TTP issue, all other issues are going to fall in place. And I'm positive and I'm very confident that this time around there is a realization on both sides to do something about it. Jason.
Right. And Janusab, there is concern with regards to the aspect of the Duran line, as you mentioned, because in the recent interview, the defense minister of the Afghan Taliban regime has called it hypothetical, said that there is no real understanding on that. And so, given the fact that there is a lot of history of mistrust, how do we make sense of these statements and make sure that the Taliban regime existing in Afghanistan at the moment is able to respect the borders as they are and as they really exist?
Sana, I will not read too much into the statement of Mullah Yaqub.
Okay.
We have to remember that these guys are not schooled in diplomacy, in governance, in statecraft. and they are just clerics who happen to be the rulers of the country. So I would not read too much into their statements. You see, the fact of the matter is that Durand line, we don't call it Durand line, we call it the international border. Pakistan is called the international border. This particular line, which was drawn by Sir Mortimer Durand in 1893, was respected as an international border for 50 countries for 20 years, led by the only superpower in the world. So it is a de jure, a de facto international border between two countries. And I'm sure Mullah Yaqub has not studied the history of Afghanistan. When Sir Mortimer Durand drew the line in 1893 after a 6 months long effort, which was led by a lot of engineers and cartographers in those times. And when the agreement was signed on the 12th of November 1893, it was ratified by a jirga of the 400 nobles, which were actually called at the behest of the Amir Abdur Rahman, who was the ruler of Afghanistan at that time. So it is an effectively a border between the two countries. It has been like this since 1893, and as a result of the land redistribution between the two countries, the British India ceded the control of Kafiristan to Afghanistan. The subsidy which was given to Afghanistan at that time was 1.2 million rupees. When that particular portion was given to Afghanistan, the subsidy was increased by another zero point 0.6 million, that is 6 lakh rupees. So a subsidy became 1.8 million rupees. And he had also this intention of taking Kafiristan, which is now Nuristan, because he wanted to convert the Kafirs into Muslims for his own political brownie points. So it is a defective de jure international border between the two countries. We should call it an international border. Mullah Yaqub either does not know the history, or he probably is sort of in a state of denial. And I would also go for, and really at this point in time, I would assert that it has been international border between the two countries. In Afghanistan, at this point in time, if you say something which is positive about Pakistan, you lose popularity. So this can be just a political a statement for political purpose on part of Mullah Yaqub. Ji.
All right. Janasab, with reference to the nexus that we know that exists between India and Afghanistan, and especially what Pakistan has repeatedly said is happening in terms of a proxy war of Indian elements operating from within Afghanistan as well, and the kind of support that is also there from within the region as well. And so this is important also in light of the way that the United Nations has also reported safe havens being provided to these terrorist organizations in Afghanistan, and then add the Indian element to it. How do we then overcome that in our negotiations with the Afghan Taliban regime when we have difficulties in seeing eye to eye over basics such as the Durand line?
Yeah, thank you, Sana. Another very important question, very good question. If I may, I would reframe as, will Afghanistan become a proxy to India? This is where actually the devil lies in the detail. There is an ideological difference between both sides. A Hindu India and a Muslim Afghanistan colluding against a Muslim Pakistan, it's a tough ask. And there will be a lot of disagreements and differences within the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan also on this issue. So that is a non-starter from the beginning. Yes, the Afghan government may like to have some economic aid and some military aid and training from the Afghan, from the Indian side, but that is this. I don't think so. They are in a position to go very far on that one. And as I mentioned earlier, Pakistan has got very punishing with Afghanistan. So that would also serve as brakes on the aspiration and sort of actions on part of some within the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan who want to get closer to India. So Afghanistan is not going to be as useful a proxy as we think. So I don't think so we should read too much into the visit of Muttaqi Saab to India. If you look at the protocol of the visit inside India, he was received by a very low-ranking officer of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and he was just taken to the Deoband and all other places. And probably there must have been some secret meetings with Doval, Ajit Doval, who is the architect of the policy in this area. But other than that, I doubt that this is going to be something. When I spoke to some Afghan officials, serving officials, I have contacts with them. They said that since Pakistan could not lift restrictions on the visit of Muttaqi, so he went to India. I said, well, Pakistan has been your benefactor, Pakistan has been your friend for a very long time, and all the support that Pakistan has provided does not justify that you befriend the enemy of Pakistan at a very critical time. First, the Jaishankar Saab and Muttaqi Saab spoke during the Make crisis with India, and then he visited India. So this is a hostile step. But again, I would say it is a very hostile step by a particular segment within the Islamic community of Afghanistan, who actually is led by Muttaqi Saab, and they are not very friendly towards Pakistan. But such people within the Afghan dispensation generally have a very short life. So that is one. If you come at the Indian side, I doubt that the India would be in a position to befriend a country which is accused of terrorism by the United Nations, nothing but the United Nations. As you mentioned, the reports are there that Afghanistan is hiding, Afghanistan is aiding and abetting and supporting terrorism against the regional peace and stability, particularly Pakistan. So, in the light of those reports coming from the United Nations, I don't think so. India will go whole hog to embrace Afghanistan at this point in time. And in addition to that, if you look at the linkages of the American relationship with the United States, which is generally in support of Pakistan and in the as far as counterterrorism is concerned, and the deteriorating relationship between New Delhi and Washington, I doubt that India would very robustly go and support a regime. As far as IEA is concerned, it was not very far. It was just in the First Republic, which was toppled by them in 2021. And before that, the Indian would call the Taliban terrorists. I visited Afghanistan a couple number of times, and all military bases were run by people from Kerala. The militaries inside the bases were run by people from Kerala. Indians were in hand in glove with the occupation forces in Afghanistan, and that I don't think they have lost on the Afghan people and a very important segment of the Islamic community of Afghanistan. So this is going to be a marriage of convergence, which, in my opinion, is going to be short-lived if we play our cards well. Jason.
All right. Thank you very much, Major General retired Inam Haque, for joining us and being part of the newsroom. An important discussion, of course, with what happened over the weekend and what lies ahead. It is integral to see how Pakistan and Afghanistan have chalked out the fact that this is important and that there is a positive direction forward. What remains is to see what really needs to be done on ground, and we're hoping that that will be planned out on the 25th of this month in Istanbul. But it's important to note that what Pakistan desires is only peace, and that the terrorist organizations that exist within Afghanistan, the safe havens that are being provided as per the UN reports, are something that are against the sovereignty of any country, and it is an ask which is the right of any country, and the Afghan Taliban regime must ensure that their territory is not used against Pakistan or any other country. We'll take a short break here and come back with the next story. Welcome back to the newsroom with Sanam. We're now going to take a look at what is happening in Gaza. Nearly 100 Palestinians have been killed and over 230 have been injured since the ceasefire agreement, as Israel has violated the truce about 80 times. And this is important because this was something that was celebrated across the world, and it is a much welcome development, but it needs to be ensured and it needs to be upheld. Whether or not that is the case on the ground, and how is it that we're going to move forward with the disarmament of Hamas and the stoppage of these airstrikes from Israel, is a matter of concern. And it is something that has also led to discussions in the top US officials as to what happens next, with the president also saying that if Hamas does not disarm, then the US will have to step in, and with lead officials including Trump's son-in-law in Israel to talk about the next steps. For this, we've been joined by Mr. Umer Karim, who's a research fellow at Geopolitics of the Middle East and South Asia at the University of Birmingham. Thank you very much, Mr. Umer, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. I'd like to start with your take on when we take a look at these violations. A lot was concerned in terms of whether or not Israel will hold the ceasefire. And there were assurances given from the US, including from the president himself, as he was embarking upon Air Force One when he went to finalize this deal, that the ceasefire will hold. But it seems that since then there have been a number of violations. What do you make of this and the way that leaders around the world, including and most importantly the US, can step in to ensure that there is peace in Gaza and that this fragile ceasefire does not fall into an all-out genocide once again?
I think this shows that this situation is quite complicated, and there are very divergent and complex interests of different stakeholders involved within Gaza. And although the United States political capital and its diplomatic muscle uh, ensured that this agreement is signed and it agreed upon by all the relevant stakeholders. But as we move forward and as we move towards the practicalities, every stakeholder will try to push the agreement and push its implementation in its favor. So it's obvious that from an Israeli perspective, clearing Gaza from Hamas presence, and actually the presence of Hamas as an armed entity is the primary goal. While from a Hamas perspective, uh, being present there as an armed actor and to have some sort of input in terms of Gaza's security atmosphere is its primary goal, because Hamas understands that it will only have a chance of survival in the long term in Gaza if it is the actor with the gun. And that's why Hamas doesn't really care about the governance situation in Gaza. Technocrats or other people from other other factions can govern in terms of day-to-day life. But when it comes to the security situation, Hamas uh, will not surrender itself, and this creates a complicated situation for the Americans, but also for the other guarantors like Turkey, Qatar, and Egypt, because eh, in a manner, if this situation escalates, and as we have seen that there have been retribution killings by Hamas of alleged alleged factions that were supported by Israel or anti-Hamas. So that creates a problem within the strip, which would provide incentives to Israel to again restart its military activities. And this is where the role of the mediators on both sides is very important, and they almost need to be there close to the field and need to have a sort of a direct line at all times with both Hamas and the Israeli side, because now we are in a new situation. The previous situation where one major or important factor was the presence of hostages is now gone. Now both sides, both Hamas and Israel, will calculate from very different understandings of the ground. And I think this is why the strategies of the mediators, of the guarantors of this agreement, they also need to evolve.
Right, thank you very much, Umar Karim, for joining us and being a part of the newsroom today. We've also been joined by Dr. Syed Mohammed, who's a lecturer at the Global Security Studies, Johns Hopkins University. Thank you very much, Dr. Syed, for being part of the newsroom. I'd like your take on the situation as well, given the fact that the US president has repeatedly talked about the disarmament of Hamas. It seems that that's an aspect that was left for the second phase of negotiations, but is something that is being cited again and again as we see the situation unfold on ground and the Palestinians continue to suffer. And so given that that is something that hasn't really been chalked out as to how exactly will it happen, how will the US ensure that this peace deal will hold?
Well, for now, it's pressure from the top. There is some consensus with the Gulf states that President Trump has managed to secure. his 20-point agenda was quite vague, and I think we are seeing sort of some of this dishevelment, with the peace process and the contestations. The earlier guest sort of alluding to, the Hamas's perspective of not laying down arms. And Israel still, there's pressure within Israel. Ben Gavir and others, the most extremists within the current government, Netanyahu's government, who feel that Hamas has still not been decimated, and there is that there's still Israeli boots on the ground, and now that they have their hostages back. They have, the capability. I mean, for 2 years, they've been resisting international disgruntlement. I mean, support, but increasing discomfort amongst, Western populations as well, seeing what has been happening in Gaza and also in the West Bank. So they have been resisting all of that. And while Netanyahu may have a possibility, I mean, he has very thick skin. He manages to reincarnate himself despite all the domestic controversies surrounding his corruption, whatnot. And there was a possibility that, given what he's delivered vis-a-vis the sort of the Palestinian situation, that he might be able to cut out the extremists and come back with the moderates, the so-called moderates in Israel. But there is, for his current government, there is this domestic compulsion for him. Hamas was involved in governance de facto in the past. I mean, that might not be a position that they will be able to come back to. It will be a very uncomfortable position in any case, given the massive destruction that has taken place right now. The sentiments and the sympathies, even in the West, are there for, and in the Arab countries that did not do much for the Palestinians during these past 2 years. That we will see an initial outpouring of support and translated into financial reconstruction and rehabilitation, perhaps alongside trying to reinvigorate the Abraham Accords. But for Hamas, I mean, it might not see a role for itself there, but it has not, agreed to entirely laying down its arms, and there has been action by Hamas as well, where there are reports coming out of sort of, them going after who they felt were the collaborators who had been passing on information to Israel. So they are making this assertion, and for Israel, there is still pressure to continue to keep perhaps a footprint, although the 20-point peace deal, which was still quite vague. We don't know what the governance structure is going to be ultimately. We don't know what Tony Blair is going to, his role. I mean, he's been announced as sort of him and President Trump, how active they are going to remain on this situation once the initial sort of attention moves away. But this situation might stabilize. I mean, Witkoff and Jared Kushner and all, and JD Vance, I think they're about to make a trip. But it is quite a fraught situation, and
Ali, I want your take also on which pressure is Netanyahu facing more. Is it from the U.S. and other international community members that have been part of this peace deal to hold it, or is it from the domestic politics within his own country, that now that the hostages have been released, is to continue the war or to make sure that Hamas is disarmed? Which pressure is more for Netanyahu, and which will he succumb to?
I think internationally there will be more pressure, because the way President Trump is thinking of this, the way that he has portrayed himself as a peacemaker, the way many Muslim countries have also lauded his role in that regard. I mean, that would be really the pressure on the Netanyahu government, because I think he might see a way out for himself as being sort of this war hero who, comes back with a sort of, conservative but not an extremist, coalition. And I mean, as far as the Israeli population goes, they had, the kind of media that they see. I mean, they were primarily concerned with, with bringing their own people back, and there has been sort of such dehumanization of the Palestinians. And while there were people who had angst about that, and the irony, when Hamas went in from Gaza, I mean, these were not settlers. A lot of these people were leftists, who had been picked up. So we heard reports of people who'd been picked up who had been part of the peace movement, wanting to collaborate with Palestinians. But uh, this was the security breach that could occur. And I was talking to some people here, and they said that attack, I mean, of course there was a history to it. It didn't just happen out of the blue. What Hamas did 2 years ago, it was born of frustration and suppression of these people over decades, and their displacement. But it sort of undercut the leftist, sort of more conciliatory movements, and further emboldened this government that had these very problematic extremist people who were, using language like these human animals. I mean, even recently, after the peace agreement, I mean, we're hearing things like, we still need to conquer and crush and win. So, that pressure is there.
We still keep on hearing, Dr. Ali, very, very strong rhetoric coming in from the US as well. And my last question would be, we hear Mr. Trump say in a sort of way that he's giving an ultimatum or a deadline to Hamas to make sure that they disarm or that they abide by what really is being asked here. And unless they don't do that, there is going to be consequences. And he's just said that recently also, that then the US will disarm them. What does that mean, particularly in the way that the US will be involved? We, of course, know how it is involved in terms of its nexus with Israel, but will it step on ground?
I think that will be unlikely. It'll probably be pressure from, from the Gulf states, conditionalities of, reconstruction and rehabilitation. Hamas would want to have some kind of a role for itself. Whether that can be a political role, one wonders. There just is not enough detail yet to see. But I don't see the US trying to put boots on the ground in this intractable situation after what happened in Afghanistan, after what happened in Iraq. I think that would be very foolhardy, and it would not help stabilize the situation. So they might want to, talk about furthering the Abraham Accords, and doing real estate development, and who will benefit from that remains to be seen. But I think that might just be bluster of the youth.
Thank you very much, Dr. Syed Ali, for joining us and being a part of the newsroom today and sharing news. What remains to be seen is whether or not this ceasefire or this peace deal that was brokered by the US and other countries, very important to the situation in Gaza, will hold or not. There have been a number of violations already, but it seems that top US officials are on ground to assess the situation and to make sure that it moves forward. And that is the hope, because it is important for the people of Gaza and for a future free Palestine. And that was always on the cards as the most important and core issue that remains. Lastly, we're going to be taking a look at what has happened in France, and there have been a number of discussions as to what is going on within French politics, but it seems adding to the woes to the presidency of Macron is the 4-minute heist that has happened in what people are calling a Hollywood-style robbery that has occurred at the iconic Louvre Museum. And this is important not only in terms of this happening in broad daylight, happening in just under 4 minutes, but also in terms of what was taken away. And it seems that 8 very important jewels taken from the Apollo Gallery have already been taken by 4 suspected people who were part of this heist, with the ninth one being dropped on their way out. And it seems this was meticulously planned, reminding a lot of people of what they've seen in movies. So let's take a look at what that means in terms of where did the security went wrong, and how exactly was this heist successful, and what happens next. For this, we've been joined by Mr. Adnan Farooq, who's a Paris-based journalist and cultural correspondent. Thank you, Adnan, for being part of the newsroom. I want your take on what really is going on in France at the moment. How is it possible that we're sitting here in 2025 and we are seeing a movie play out right in front of us? As far as I remember, it was perhaps decades ago that any such thing happened at the Louvre, with the Mona Lisa painting being taken away and recovered 2 years later. But that was back in 1911.
Thank you for inviting me. At that moment in France, everybody is stunned, everybody is surprised. But actually, it is more a cultural thing, that how the people are not concerned of anything what is happening around them. The neighbors don't care. So that's a typical example of a Western living style, that people were passing through and they saw most of the people, even they make photographs of some people in a disguise of workers, construction workers, repair workers, and through a ladder they were entering the window, and everybody was thinking that they're cleaning the window, and suddenly it's just 7 minutes, and 7 minutes is so short response time that nobody could think that somebody can enter. I have been to museum, almost every museum, and always was thinking that, oh, there's nobody, and it can happen anytime, and it happened.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Adnan, for joining us and sharing what really went wrong at the moment. There seems to be a lot of discussion as to how these thieves are going to be caught. But one thing's for sure, that is something that the French government is taking very, very seriously. A lot of people are also commenting on large crowds visiting the museum as well, and it being understaffed. But the fact that this happened in broad daylight and in a matter of minutes is causing much embarrassment to the French government, along with the loss of jewels that they are now facing. And it remains to be seen exactly what is going to be made of this particular heist and how they're going to get away with it. But it will be a story for sure. That's all that we have from the newsroom today. We'll now see you tomorrow.